The stars were silent that night. Far beyond the edge of known space, 1,000 civilizations slept under the illusion of peace. Worlds traded goods, shared knowledge, and watched the cosmos with pride. But deep inside the grand hall of the Galactic Council, the air was heavy with debate. Creatures from every corner of the galaxy had gathered. Some tall and shining, others scaled and cold, some with voices like thunder, and others who spoke through thought alone. They were the self-proclaimed guardians of order, the rulers of the stars. The council meeting was meant to be routine, trade routes, border disputes, a few minor wars between small species. But tonight, something else was on the agenda. Something strange. An old holomap floated above the center table, showing a small blue planet on the outer rim. The glowing name read, Earth. Counselor Drelm, a towering reptilian with scales like armor, tapped his claw against the hologram. This, he said with a deep growl, is the human world, a young species, barely out of their cradle. Yet they build weapons strong enough to reach the stars. A ripple of laughter filled the chamber. Some leaned back in amusement, others smirked. Counselor Varys, a tall, silver-skinned diplomat, spoke next. Humans? I've heard of them. Emotional, violent, and short-lived. They destroy their own world for resources. How could such creatures ever be a threat? A few nodded. One even joked. They probably still argue about who owns the moon. But not everyone was laughing. In the corner of the chamber stood Professor Thalen, a scientist from the Aurelian species, known for their logic and calm nature. His large eyes reflected the hologram of Earth. He spoke softly, but his voice carried through the hall like a whisper of truth. You all laugh, Thalen began. But I have studied them. These humans. They are not what they appear to be. Drelm turned toward him with a grin. Do tell us, Professor. What could these savages possibly do? Throw rocks at our ships. Thalen didn't flinch. They are unpredictable, he said. They adapt faster than any race I've ever seen. You destroy their cities and they rebuild stronger. You challenge them and they grow smarter. Their greatest weapon is not their machines. It's their will. The laughter grew louder. Willpower? Someone mocked. You mean their stubbornness? Thalen's eyes darkened. Call it what you want, but mark my words. Provoke them, and you'll awaken something you cannot control. The council dismissed his words. To them, Earth was nothing more than a curious dot in the void. Humanity had barely begun to travel beyond its own solar system. What danger could they pose to empires that had ruled the stars for millennia? The discussion moved on, filled with arrogance and noise. Plans were made. Decisions were signed. The council decided to expand its influence into the human sector, a place they considered unclaimed space. Thalen stood quietly, feeling the weight of something he couldn't name. His fingers tightened around his data tablet. He had seen the images. Cities rising from ashes, nations uniting after endless wars, a species that refused to die. He had read their history. Every time humanity was pushed to extinction, they found a way to rise again. He looked up at the laughing leaders and whispered under his breath, You don't understand them, and you will regret it. As the meeting ended, the council lights dimmed. The galaxy outside shone with the beauty of countless suns. To most, it was a peaceful sight, but to Thalen, it looked like a graveyard waiting to be filled. Later that night, as he returned to his quarters, he activated his personal console and opened a message. A private signal he had intercepted weeks ago. The signal came from the outer rim, from the direction of Sol System, the human home. It was simple, composed of repeating radio waves, but when translated into galactic standard, it formed a chilling sentence. Do not test us. Thalen stared at those words for a long time. No threats, no explanations. Just that warning. Simple, cold, human. He sent the message to the council security team earlier that week, but they ignored it. They called it a joke, probably sent by human scientists trying to sound dangerous. They said humans were good at making noise but never at keeping promises. But Thalen wasn't laughing. He remembered how fast human technology had grown in just 2 centuries, from steam engines to quantum drives. No other species had evolved that quickly, and yet they called them primitive. The next morning, new reports came in from the border sectors. Human explorers had reached the edge of alien-controlled space. They had sent peaceful greetings, messages of trade and friendship. The Council responded coldly, warning them to stay away. Still, humanity tried again, and again, until one Council fleet decided to teach them a lesson. A small human outpost was destroyed, hundreds killed. The official report claimed it was an accident, but everyone knew it wasn't. It was a message, a show of power. When Thalen heard the news, he knew the line had been crossed. He tried to warn them again, but no one listened. That night, as he looked out the viewport into the endless dark, the stars felt different, quieter, like they were holding their breath. Then suddenly his console flickered to life. Static filled the air, and a voice came through. A human voice. Calm, confident, unshaken. "We heard your message," the voice said. "We understand your warning, but we do not forget, and we do not forgive." Then silence. Thalen's heart pounded. He ran scans, thinking it was an echo or interference. But the message repeated once more, this time carried across multiple channels, bouncing through the galactic networks faster than anyone could trace. "Do not test us." The next morning, the message had spread across the galaxy. Every communication hub, every listening post, every starship had received it. Some dismissed it as a trick. Others called it a myth. But a few, the wise ones, felt the chill of truth in those words. The Galactic Council met again, this time under tension. They demanded to know who spread the message. They blamed pirates, rebels, or rogue AIs. But Thalen knew. He had seen the signal code, human encryption, unmistakable. As they argued and shouted, Thalen stood silently by the window, his eyes fixed on the faint glow of a distant blue world. And he whispered once more, almost like a prayer, "You'll remember my words when it's too late." Outside, in the cold vastness of space, something stirred near the edge of human territory. A shadow among the stars. Silent, patient, watching. The warning had been given. And soon the galaxy would learn what it meant to ignore it. The silence after the warning spread across the stars like a quiet storm. Every major power in the galaxy had heard the human message, "Do not test us." Yet no one truly believed it. The Galactic Council called it a bluff. They said it was just another primitive attempt to sound powerful. Months passed. The message became old news. Something scholars laughed about in universities, something soldiers joked about in their barracks. Humanity went quiet again, and the stars went back to their normal rhythm. But silence, as Professor Thalen knew, is never simple. Sometimes it means peace, and sometimes it means preparation. Far on the edges of Council territory, life continued as usual. Trade ships moved, patrol fleets guarded borders, and colonists built new worlds. And yet, one sector, the Alaris frontier, began to report strange things. Outposts receiving unknown signals. Mining stations detecting distant energy spikes. Entire cargo ships vanishing into the void without a trace. At first, the Council dismissed it as pirate activity. They sent a few patrols, found nothing, and moved on. But then, one of their own scout ships, the Velker 7, sent a final transmission before going dark. The captain's last words were broken by static, but one line was clear. "It's them. They're watching us." The Council didn't like mysteries. They wanted control, order, and certainty. So they decided to make a statement. A massive fleet was assembled. 10 warships, each carrying weapons strong enough to vaporize a moon. Their mission: enter human space and remind the young species of their place in the galaxy. Professor Thalen, hearing of the operation, rushed to stop it. He stood before the Council once again, his voice trembling with urgency. "Do not go into their territory," he pleaded. "You are about to step into something you don't understand." Counselor Drelm growled. "They are weak. They have no allies. They will learn respect." Thalen slammed his hand on the table. "Respect cannot be forced. You think them primitive, but you forget what they truly are: survivors. They will not surrender. They will respond. But the decision had already been made. The Council's arrogance was too heavy to move. Within days, the fleet entered human-controlled space. Their ships were massive, elegant, and proud, designed to intimidate. They crossed the border near a small human colony called New Carthage, a peaceful world of farmers, scientists, and families. The humans sent a message. You are entering restricted space. Please identify. The alien commander ignored it. He sent his own transmission, full of arrogance. By order of the Galactic Council, this territory now belongs to the Unified Stars. You will evacuate immediately. The human reply came after a pause, calm and short. Leave now. There will be consequences. That line made the aliens laugh. Consequences? Their commander repeated. What could these children possibly do? Moments later, the alien fleet opened fire. Bright beams of plasma tore across the sky, hitting the human colony. In seconds, entire cities turned to ash. A world that had taken generations to build was gone within an hour. The Council called it a display of power. The aliens called it a lesson. But across human space, that lesson was received very differently. The surviving outposts fell silent. Civilian networks stopped broadcasting. Trade traffic vanished. To outsiders, it looked like fear. The galaxy watched and whispered, "The humans have been broken." But Thalen knew better. He had seen that silence before, in their history, in their wars, in their nature. Silence, for humans, was never surrender. It was the deep breath before the storm. Weeks passed. The alien fleet stayed near the ruins of New Carthage, proud of what they had done. They sent images back to the Council, proof of victory. Soldiers celebrated. Commanders gave speeches about galactic peace and discipline. Then, one night, the stars went dark. The fleet's sensors failed one by one. Communication arrays went silent. The void grew thick, as if the very air had turned heavy. "Report!" the commander shouted. No answer. Only static. Then a faint signal appeared on their radar, small, distant, and approaching fast. "Probably debris," someone said. But it wasn't debris. It was a ship, human design, smaller than a frigate, moving faster than any known drive could allow. The alien commander ordered weapons ready. "Identify yourself," he demanded. No reply. The small ship stopped just beyond firing range. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then their main screen flickered to life. A human face appeared, calm, shadowed, unreadable. The voice spoke slowly, almost politely. "You were warned." Before the commander could respond, the signal cut. A blinding light filled the view. One by one, the alien ships exploded, not from impact, but from inside, as if their systems had been hacked and turned against them. The entire fleet vanished in less than 2 minutes. When Council rescue teams arrived weeks later, they found only drifting metal and silence. No distress calls. No survivors. Only one message left in the black box of the lead ship. "We asked you not to test us." The Council tried to hide the truth. They said the fleet was destroyed by a supernova or a technical failure. But whispers spread fast. Every empire, every race began to talk about the humans again. Some called it revenge. Others called it justice. But one thing was certain: humanity was no longer silent. Back on Earth, a secret meeting took place in an underground facility. Leaders from every human nation sat around a black table. In the center was a symbol, a single red circle with 2 words beneath it: Project Retribution. No speeches, no shouting, just a silent agreement that echoed across the room like thunder. "We warned them once. Never again." Professor Thalen, now considered a fool by his peers, watched from afar. He knew what was coming. He had warned them, begged them, but they laughed. Now, as he looked at the stars, he whispered again to himself. "They think the humans are done. They have no idea what they've unleashed." And somewhere in the cold emptiness of space, unseen by alien eyes, human ships began to move, silent, precise, unstoppable. The storm had started. The galaxy just didn't know it yet. For months, the galaxy was quiet again. The Galactic Council declared peace, claiming that the human problem was resolved. The destroyed colony of New Carthage was removed from the official star maps, as if it had never existed. The council moved on with their usual business, trade, politics, power. But silence has a strange way of growing heavy. Something about it felt wrong. Space traffic near human borders began to decline. Scouts reported seeing faint flashes in the void, lights that didn't match any known ship signatures. At first, no one paid attention. The council told everyone to ignore baseless rumors. They said humanity had learned its lesson. But in secret, their outer worlds started vanishing, one after another. It began quietly. A mining colony in the Zareth belt went offline. No distress call. No explosion. Just gone. Then, a patrol ship sent from the Draxan Empire stopped responding. The last thing they transmitted was a fragment of sound, metallic, slow, almost like a human voice whispering. "We warned you." The council ordered an investigation. 3 fleets were dispatched to different sectors near human space. None of them returned. Still, the council refused to believe. "Impossible," they said. "Humans don't have the power for this. They barely understand warp technology." But then the reports started coming in, from dozens of worlds across the rim. Each one told the same story. A single, dark ship appearing out of nowhere. No radio signals. No visible weapons. And yet, every time it appeared, fleets vanished. No survivors. No wreckage. Just empty space. The alien news networks began calling it the ghost of Earth. Panic spread through the outer colonies. Refugees fled toward the inner systems, telling stories of human ships with invisible drives and energy weapons that didn't exist on any galactic database. The council called it nonsense, but fear is not easily silenced. And when fear grows, even the mighty begin to tremble. Professor Thalen sat alone in his laboratory, staring at star maps covered with red marks. Everyone a lost fleet, a destroyed colony, or a missing patrol. He didn't smile and he didn't celebrate. He simply whispered, "It's begun." He remembered the message humans sent after New Carthage. There will be consequences. Now the galaxy was starting to understand what those words meant. One evening, the Galactic Council called an emergency session. The room was filled with chaos. Arguments, accusations, fear. Counselor Varys slammed her hand on the table. "These attacks are spreading. Who else could do this?" A voice from the corner spoke, quiet, calm, and cold. "You already know who." All eyes turned to Thalen. "You said this would happen," Varys hissed. "Are you saying they're responsible for all this destruction?" Thalen nodded slowly. "Yes, and this is only the beginning," Counselor Dreln growled. "Then we'll destroy them before they destroy us." Thalen met his eyes. "You tried that once. How did it end?" The room fell silent. For the first time, the leaders of 1,000 worlds felt something they hadn't felt in centuries: fear. Not of monsters, not of war, but of humans. Weeks later, a massive alien fleet assembled near the border of human space. Hundreds of ships, the largest in galactic history. Their goal: find the source of the attacks and eliminate it once and for all. They never came back. One transmission, however, did escape the destruction. A fragmented recording from a dying ship. Static filled most of it, but one line was clear. "They are not fighting for conquest. They are cleaning the board." That phrase spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Cleaning the board. It sounded clinical, emotionless, like humans had decided the galaxy itself was now a threat that needed to be reset. And then came the moment no one could explain. A video surfaced on the Council's internal network. No one knew who sent it. The image was shaky, filmed from a damaged ship drifting through space. In the distance, a massive object floated, a human ship, but unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was enormous, covered in black armor that reflected no light. Its design was simple, efficient, terrifyingly human. A voice played over the recording, deep, calm, unmistakably human. "We warned you. You ignored us. Now we answer." The transmission ended with 3 words on the screen. "Project Retribution, Phase 1 complete. In the weeks that followed, hundreds of alien fleets tried to retaliate. None succeeded. Humans never attacked the same place twice. They appeared, destroyed military targets, and disappeared again without leaving a trace. No planets were invaded. No civilians were targeted. Humanity wasn't conquering, they were correcting. One alien commander, desperate and terrified, managed to capture a human probe drifting near the frontier. It was small, silent, and old, built from designs hundreds of years outdated. But when they opened it, they found a message inside. A voice spoke softly. "We came in peace once. You chose war. You burned our homes, killed our people, and mocked our warnings. This is not revenge. This is balance." The message ended with coordinates, not to a human world, but to New Carthage, now nothing more than ashes and glass. The commander destroyed the probe immediately. But it was too late. The message had already spread across networks faster than they could contain it. The galaxy now knew humanity hadn't forgotten. They never forget. Professor Thalen, now living in exile, watched the chaos unfold from a quiet moon far from the core worlds. The night sky above him shimmered with red flashes, the reflection of battles happening light years away. He recorded a private log, his voice weary. "They laughed at the warning. They called me mad. But I told them humans do not fight to win. They fight to end the fight forever." He paused, looking at the stars. Perhaps they are not monsters. Perhaps they are only doing what we forced them to become. And as he looked up, a faint light streaked across the horizon. A human vessel passing silently through the void, on its way to another forgotten frontier. The galaxy had entered a new era. The age of arrogance was over, and humanity had returned. The galaxy had never known fear like this. For centuries, countless species had fought wars, conquered worlds, and rebuilt their empires. They thought they understood war, the strategies, the losses, the victories. But humanity changed everything. At first, the Council tried to deny the truth. They blamed the disappearances on rogue factions, pirate kings, or malfunctioning AIs. But as more fleets vanished and more worlds fell silent, the illusion of control began to crumble. Every report told the same story. A dark human ship appeared, silent, without warning, and entire armadas simply ceased to exist. No debris, no signals, only emptiness. The galaxy's rulers gathered again in their great hall, but this time, there was no laughter. The arrogance was gone. The lights were dim, and the air felt heavy with dread. Counselor Dreln, the same reptilian warlord who once mocked humans, slammed his claws against the table. "We cannot let them continue. We must unite. All of us." Counselor Varys nodded shakily. "The humans have technology we've never seen. If we don't act now, they will erase us all." A nervous silence followed. No one wanted to admit what everyone already knew. They had provoked something far beyond their control. From one corner of the room, Professor Thalen watched quietly. He looked older now, tired, hollow-eyed. "You can gather all your fleets," he said softly, "but it won't matter. They don't fight your kind of war." Varys turned to him. "Then tell us, Professor, what do they fight for?" Thalen's eyes met hers. "For the memory of the fallen. For every life you took from them. For every warning you ignored." No one spoke after that. Within weeks, the entire galaxy united under one purpose: to stop humanity. The largest fleet ever assembled in history was formed. Over 100,000 ships, from 50 different species. They called it the Alliance of Light. They believed that, with such numbers, they could finally destroy humanity's mysterious armada. They sent their forces to the border of human-controlled space, to a system known as Erebus Gate. There they waited. Days passed, then weeks. No human ships appeared. The soldiers began to whisper that perhaps the humans had retreated, that maybe the fear was overblown. Then, on the 7th day, the stars went dark. The command ship sensors stopped working one by one. Their radar screens turned black. Communications dropped. And then, they saw it. From the edge of the void, something emerged. Not one ship, not a fleet, a wall. Hundreds of black vessels moving as one, perfectly silent, perfectly aligned. Their surfaces reflected no light, their drives made no sound. They looked like shadows shaped into weapons. At the center of the formation was a single, colossal ship, larger than any dreadnought ever built, glowing faintly with the blue light of its engines. On its hull were 3 words in bold white letters: Project Retribution. The Alliance opened fire first. Thousands of plasma rounds and missiles streaked through space. The human ships didn't move. The weapons simply vanished, swallowed by invisible energy fields. The Alliance's admirals shouted in panic. "They're using gravity wells. Adjust targeting." But it was too late. In an instant, the human fleet responded. They didn't use flashy explosions or bright beams. They used precision, pinpoint strikes that disabled engines, vaporized reactors, and shut down ships without mercy. The battle lasted only 7 minutes. When it was over, the once mighty Alliance of Light was nothing but drifting metal and silence. Only one ship, a crippled scout, managed to transmit a message back to the Council. The audio was full of static, but one sentence was clear. They didn't come to conquer. They came to end the war. On Earth, humanity watched in silence. There were no celebrations, no victory speeches, no parades. The faces of the dead from New Carthage were still remembered. In a quiet command room buried deep under the surface, human leaders reviewed the reports. One of them, an old admiral, turned off the display and said, "End it." That single order echoed across the stars. Human fleets withdrew from alien space, leaving behind destroyed military outposts but untouched civilian worlds. They didn't burn cities. They didn't enslave anyone. They just erased the machines of war and then disappeared. When the Council tried to contact them, every signal came back with the same short response: justice served. War concluded. The galaxy was left in shock. Billions had expected revenge, genocide, destruction, chaos. But instead, humanity chose something different. They chose restraint. That made them even more terrifying. The aliens couldn't understand it. "Why stop now?" they asked. "They could rule the galaxy." Thalen answered quietly, "Because they never wanted to rule. They just wanted to be left alone." Months later, when the dust settled, a few council members traveled to Earth under a white flag. They expected to meet a cold, militarized world. But what they saw left them speechless. Earth wasn't covered in war machines. It was peaceful, cities rebuilt, forests alive, oceans clean. Children played in the streets. People smiled. A human diplomat greeted them politely. "You came to apologize," he said, "and we accept. But remember, peace was always our first offer." One alien asked, his voice trembling, "Why did you spare us?" The human smiled faintly. "Because mercy is what makes us human." The aliens left Earth with their hearts heavy. They had seen power greater than any empire, yet tempered by compassion, a combination they couldn't understand. Back in his lab, Professor Thalen recorded one final message for his private archive. His voice was calm, filled with quiet respect. "They warned us. We laughed. They suffered in silence. And when they returned, they did not destroy us. They taught us." He paused, gazing at the blue glow of Earth through his telescope. "Perhaps that is what makes them different. Not their weapons, but their hearts." Outside, the stars shone brighter than ever before. The war was over, but the story of humanity, the species that warned once and acted once, would be remembered for as long as the galaxy endured. Because in the end, everyone learned the same lesson. Humanity never seeks vengeance, but it always delivers justice. The war was over, but the silence that followed was louder than any explosion. Across the galaxy, communications that once buzzed with noise and arrogance were now quiet. Entire fleets drifted in ruins, their broken hulls floating like ghosts among the stars. Planets that once feared no one now whispered one name with reverence and fear: humanity. No one had seen a human ship for weeks. After Project Retribution ended, every trace of the human fleet vanished. No signals, no transmissions, no demands. They came, they struck, and then they disappeared back into the dark. The The Galactic Council met once again, but this time, the room felt like a tomb. The once proud leaders now spoke in hushed voices. Their armies were gone, their pride shattered. And yet they were alive. Humanity had spared them. That fact alone haunted them more than death. Counselor Varys broke the silence first. "What now?" she whispered. "Do we rebuild? Or do we wait for them to return?" Counselor Dreln, his scales dull and scarred, lowered his head. "We rebuild, but not as conquerors. Not anymore." Then all eyes turned to Professor Thalen, who stood quietly near the center of the room. His calm face hid the sorrow he carried. "You all mocked the warning," he said softly, "and now you live because they chose mercy. Do not waste it." No one argued. No one dared to. Weeks passed. Slowly, life began to return to the galaxy. Trade routes reopened. Worlds rebuilt their cities. But things were not the same. In every corner of space, humanity's warning was remembered. Carved into walls, painted on ships, even taught to children. Do not test them. The galaxy had learned to fear that phrase. Strangely, humanity never responded to any of the Council's transmissions. They didn't ask for tribute, territory, or apologies. They wanted nothing. It was almost worse than war, the not knowing, the silence, the realization that the most powerful species in the galaxy didn't need anything from anyone. Across dozens of alien worlds, people began to build monuments to the fallen of New Carthage, the human colony that started it all. Flowers from different planets, glowing lights, and messages of regret filled the memorials. For the first time in galactic history, unity came not through power or control, but through shared guilt. On the planet Alaris Prime, a small alien child asked her mother, "Will the humans come here too?" The mother smiled sadly and said, "No, little one. They only come when they must." The child tilted her head. "Are they monsters?" Her mother shook her head. "No. They are the mirror we never wanted to look into." The story of humanity spread from world to world, sometimes whispered in fear, sometimes told with respect. Soldiers spoke of their precision, engineers studied their technology, and philosophers studied their mercy. They had waged war like gods, yet stopped like saints. One evening, the Council received a transmission, the first human signal in months. The room fell into total silence as the hologram flickered to life. A single human figure appeared, face calm, eyes cold, wearing a black uniform with the emblem of Earth. The voice was steady, emotionless. "To the Galactic Council. The war between our species is over. We will not pursue further conflict. But know this, we do not forget. Let this peace be built not from fear, but from understanding. Learn, change, because if this lesson fades, we will return." The transmission ended there. No threats, no promises, just truth. Counselor Varys trembled. They sound so calm. Thalen closed his eyes. That's what makes them terrifying. They don't need anger to act. They act because it is right. Years passed. The galaxy changed. The Council disbanded its military arm. Instead, they built a peace network, a shared defense meant to prevent any single empire from ever abusing power again. Old rivalries ended. New alliances were born. For the first time in history, the galaxy began to heal. But every year, on the anniversary of New Carthage, all ships across known space dimmed their lights for 1 minute in silence. No one ordered it. It just became tradition. On that day, even the stars seemed to bow in quiet respect. Far from the galactic core, on a small observation station orbiting an uninhabited moon, Professor Thalen recorded one last log entry. "It has been 10 years since the humans vanished from the stars. Some say they returned to isolation, others say they watch us still. Maybe both are true. But one thing is certain, they left us with more than scars. They left us with understanding. We thought strength came from dominance. They showed us strength comes from restraint." He paused, looking out at the dark stretch of space where Earth lay, unseen but always felt. "They taught us that power without compassion is destruction. And mercy is the sharpest blade of all." Thalen smiled faintly, his old eyes reflecting the stars. We feared them. We still do. But maybe we needed to. He closed the log and turned off the lights. Outside the window, a faint light moved across the distant black. A ship, silent and small, just passing through. No identification signal. No weapons locked. Just a ship, gliding quietly toward the unknown. For a moment, Thalen thought he saw a symbol on its side. A red circle, faint but unmistakable. Then it vanished into the dark. He whispered to himself, "They're still watching." Across the galaxy, stories turned into legends. Legends became warnings, and warnings became wisdom passed through generations. When young cadets entered military academies, they read a line etched on every training wall. Never mistake humanity's silence for weakness. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of deep space, a voice older than stars seemed to echo back. Because silence is only the breath before the storm. The galaxy was peaceful once more. Trade flowed through the stars, colonies rebuilt their worlds, and old enemies became cautious friends. Yet beneath that peace lived a quiet truth, the memory of humanity. Generations passed, and still the story was told. In every academy, every council hall, and every home, children grew up hearing the same warning. They laughed at the warning once. But humanity never forgives the price of arrogance. The words were more than a story now. They were a lesson, carved into the hearts of those who survived and passed down through time. On a small moon orbiting a red dwarf star, a young alien historian named Kale sat alone in a vast library. He had spent his life collecting stories from before the War of Silence, as the galaxy now called it. He opened an old data tablet and found the last human transmission ever recorded. The screen flickered to life, showing the same calm face that once addressed the Galactic Council. "Peace is a choice," the human voice said, "but so is destruction. Choose carefully, for mercy does not live forever." Kale felt a chill run down his spine. Even after so many years, that voice still carried power. He looked out the window. The stars glittered like cold eyes watching from the dark. "Where are they now?" he whispered. No one knew. No one had seen a human for over a century. Some said they returned to Earth and sealed their borders forever. Others believed they still watched, hidden, silent, waiting. And then there were those who believed humanity had become something greater, something beyond. As Kale pondered, he noticed an old metal plaque on the wall. Dusty, faded, but still legible. It read, "Strength without compassion is cruelty. Compassion without strength is weakness." Humanity was both. He smiled faintly. "They were balance," he said quietly. "The storm and the calm." Outside, the stars shimmered, and for a second, he thought he saw a brief flash of light, a straight line cutting across the darkness. A ship? Or just his imagination? It didn't matter. The message was what lasted. In another part of the galaxy, an old veteran sat by a memorial. He had once fought against the humans during the war. Now he placed a single flower on the stone, a glowing white bloom from his homeworld. He spoke softly, his voice trembling. "We were blind. We thought victory was in conquest. But they showed us victory lies in restraint." He closed his eyes and remembered the day the human fleet stopped their attack, even when they could have destroyed everything. He remembered their silence, not of fear, but of control. Tears fell down his old face. "Thank you," he whispered into the wind. Back on Earth, deep within the ruins of an ancient command center, a group of humans stood before a massive holographic display. It showed the galaxy, peaceful, united, thriving. A young officer asked, "Do we ever reveal ourselves again?" The commander looked at the stars, then simply said, "No, not yet. They've learned their lesson. But if they forget, we'll remind them." The room went quiet. Only the low hum of distant machinery filled the air. Another officer smiled. "Then we keep watching?" The commander nodded. "Always." The display flickered off, leaving only darkness. And the soft glow of the earth below, calm and blue, like nothing had ever happened. In the end, it wasn't strength that made humanity feared. It was their understanding, that peace means nothing without the will to protect it. They warned the galaxy once, and when no one listened, they acted. But even then, they stopped before destroying everything. Because power without mercy is just destruction, and mercy without strength is just hope. The voice softens, slower and more thoughtful now. Remember this, traveler. Never ignore the quiet ones. Never laugh at a warning. For sometimes, the silence hides the most dangerous kind of strength, the kind that waits. And if this story reminded you of what true strength means, then stay with us. Subscribe, share, and join our journey through more tales of humanity's power, mercy, and legend. Because in this universe, humanity forgives many things, but never arrogance.